You're being monitored for brand noncompliance. The Slack message blinked in my notifications like a digital death sentence. I was sipping stale breakroom coffee, wearing the same damn shirt I designed in month 4 of our rebrand, the draft logo no one outside the design team had seen, printed on a soft cotton tee we mocked up for internal morale. Casual Friday, my ass, by Monday. HR was calling it unauthorized apparel and whispering about image discipline like I'd rolled in wearing a MAGA hat and Crocs. I knew then, the axe was already in the air, just waiting to fall. You ever sit in a meeting where a guy who couldn't design his way out of a PowerPoint template starts explaining elevated brand ecosystems to the woman who built them? That's what the last 3 weeks of my life had been. Our new VP of Marketing, Dylan with a Y, been hired straight from some clickbait top 40 under 40 list, and he landed in our office with a ring light, a cargo of buzzwords, and a LinkedIn presence that could blind a bat. He didn't look at me during meetings. He didn't ask questions. He just started streamlining my role out of visibility, first by reassigning all client-facing presentations, then by renaming my files and slapping his initials on them like a frat boy claiming a keg. But see, I'd been here before, not just in this company, but in this exact script. A man gets hired above you, decides your tone is abrasive because you don't giggle at his brainstorms, and before you know it, your 10 years of work gets handed to some dude who calls beige millennial top. So I did what I always do when I sense the temperature dropping. I got quiet, stayed alert, and started copying everything to my home drive. Not to retaliate, just to preserve the truth. The real version, not the version he'd retell on his podcast. That Friday, I wore the shirt without thinking. It was soft, it was clean, and it was mine. A relic from the early concept sprints when we were still dreaming big before the executive interference kicked in. Dylan saw it during the morning check-in, narrowed his eyes like I'd pissed on his vision board and said, "That's not authorized merch." I laughed, thought he was kidding. He wasn't. Listen, I know this is where you usually scroll past, but if you're into watching the quiet ones burn the place down without lifting a match, hit that like button and maybe throw us a subscribe. It actually helps more than you know. Plus, you'll want front row seats for what's about to hit the fan. By lunch, I'd been summoned to HR like I was a misbehaving intern. Tanya from HR, who once asked me if Helvetica was a person, sat me down with this tight little smirk on her face and slid a paper across the desk. "We're letting you go for branding violations. You posted confidential design elements publicly without clearance." I blinked at her. "You mean the shirt?" She nodded like I'd just confessed to arson. "There are channels for this, Barbara. You know that." I opened my mouth to correct her, to remind her that the design was mine, that it was approved in phase 1, and that the shirt had been printed internally as a morale prototype before Dylan even showed up, but I stopped. There's no arguing with someone who's already written your exit email. I closed my mouth, smiled, and thanked her for her time. On my way out, I grabbed the sealed envelope I kept in my desk, the Phase 3 NDA compliance addendum. Nobody'd asked me to sign it. I'd requested it from legal back in January, and Dylan started sniffing around the brand files with an NDA template written by ChatGPT. They took my badge, walked me to the elevator like I was a risk. HR posted a photo on LinkedIn that afternoon. My face standing outside the building, blurry from the security cam. Caption, "Not all departures are sad. Sometimes it's about protecting the brand. Hash do not rehire, hash excellence only," and there it was. Front and center, the shirt. The shirt with the logo. The logo they were set to unveil in 2 weeks as part of their $8 million rebrand. I stared at the post. The timestamp, the graphic, I didn't comment, didn't message anyone. Just sat there in my car for a minute, engine running, and laughed until the tears came. Because it was too late for them to take it down. Too late to hide it. Too late to pretend it never happened. And they posted it themselves. Dylan made his grand entrance like a rejected game show host. Tan too orange, teeth too white, and enough cologne to fumigate a mid-sized conference room. First week on the job, and he was already calling all-hands meetings about brand synergy momentum. I watched from the back as he strutted around the conference table, flipping through a PDF of my work like it was a napkin sketch he'd found in a Denny's. "Too muted," he said, clicking past months of layered color studies. "We want something that disrupts, not something that whispers." Someone coughed behind their hand. I didn't. See, Dylan wasn't the first VP who thought PowerPoint made him Picasso. But he was the first to ignore the project timeline, the research, and the fact that the new brand identity had been approved by legal and locked under NDA 6 months ago. The shirts, my idea. Back in phase 1, we printed a half-dozen samples with the draft logo to get a feel for how it played in real-world lighting. We tested thread weight, fabric tone, ink absorption. I'd logged every iteration in the internal system. Hell, I had the original email from legal, approved for internal morale use only, not for public distribution. Dated, time-stamped, bulletproof. But Dylan didn't care. He didn't see the structure or the strategy. He saw a woman in her 40s with short hair and flat shoes, and he decided I wasn't elevating the vibe. His words, not mine. It started with small cuts. I was suddenly left off the calendar invites for brand meetings I'd started. He scheduled redundant presentations over my deliverables. My slides were streamlined by his assistant, which meant deleting anything that didn't have a stock photo of a millennial laughing at salad. Even replaced our brand tone guide, 2 years of voice development, with a PDF called How to Sound Like a Disruptor without alienating boomers. I tried to play ball at first, nodded in meetings, asked clarifying questions, offered to walk him through the client feedback from our last round. He smiled like I was a well-meaning dinosaur and asked if I wanted to spend more time on passion projects. That's tech speak for, we're pushing you out, but slowly enough that HR doesn't get nervous. So yeah, that Friday I wore the shirt. It was just sitting there in my closet, folded next to the hoodie we'd screen printed with the old logo after we hit Series B. Soft charcoal cotton, logo dead center in pale rose gold, subtle, modern, precise. I designed it during a week-long insomnia spell while my upstairs neighbor tried to learn the harmonica. That shirt was me. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't a message. It was just mine. Dylan saw it in the hallway outside the snack bar and froze like he'd seen a ghost. Is that merch? I blinked. It's a concept shirt from Phase 1, approved internally. He looked me up and down, lips curling like I'd just sneezed on his ring light. That's unauthorized, he said. That's a problem. I half laughed. I designed it. He didn't laugh. He just whipped out his phone and took a picture like I was Exhibit A in a lawsuit. We'll need to escalate this. That design hasn't been publicly cleared. Neither has the entire brand, I said, keeping my voice steady. That's why it's under NDA. Then why are you wearing it? He snapped. Because it was approved, I said, pulling out my phone, already pulling up the email chain from legal dated 6 months ago. He waved it off. This isn't about emails, it's about optics. Of course it was. Optics were his gospel. Truth was optional. I'd seen it before. Guys like him don't read the docs. They don't check the approvals. They just scream branding emergency until HR blinks first. And HR always blinked. Sure enough, I got the slack from Tanya before I even made it back to my desk. Hey Barb, quick check-in when you're free. HR Conf 4. Conf 4. That was the small room, the one with the soundproofing. By the time I stepped inside, the conversation was already a report. Tanya had the termination draft open on her laptop and a printed copy of the NDA beside it, open to a clause that had nothing to do with the shirt. I offered her my email, the one from legal. She skimmed it like it was in Sanskrit, but still the post went up. And Dylan flagged it as a breach. What post? I asked. Tanya turned the laptop. There it was, LinkedIn. My face snapped outside the building, the shirt. Caption, sometimes protecting the brand means making hard choices. Hash do not rehire, I stared at it. Felt something in me go cold. You posted that before firing me? She blinked. Well, we technically know it auto-scheduled. Auto-scheduled, I repeated. You have to understand, Barbara. Perception is reality in marketing. No, I said, standing. Reality is reality in marketing. But good luck selling perception at the Series C call. I left before she could reply. And I made one stop on the way out. Not to legal, not to IT, not to my manager. I stopped by my old intern's desk, Emily. She looked up, confused. Hey, I said, gently setting a flash drive on her desk. If the rebrand timeline shifts, give me a heads up. Her eyes widened. Are you? I'm fine, I said. Just keep me posted. Because I already knew what they didn't. That shirt, that post, that logo, it was out there now. And legally. They just disclosed it themselves. The moment the door clicked shut behind me in HR Conf 4, I knew it was over. Tanya didn't even pretend to make small talk. No fake smile, no how are you feeling today? Just that same managerial grimace they wear when they're about to push someone off the corporate ledge and don't want to get any emotional blood on their blouse. Her keyboard was still clacking when I sat down. And across the table, HR compliance officer Martha, I think, was already stacking 2 identical envelopes. One white, one manila, both labeled with my name in a font I designed for the internal newsletter 2 years ago. Nothing like watching your own typography fire you. Barbara, Tanya began, her voice pitching up like she was trying to soften a blow she was actively swinging. This isn't personal. You've been a valued contributor, and we take brand integrity very seriously. Martha cut in, pushing the white envelope forward like it was a peace offering and not a preloaded guillotine. I didn't speak, just nodded. Let them walk through the motions. We understand you wore a shirt with unreleased intellectual property, Tanya said, enunciating each syllable like she was explaining it to a courtroom stenographer. The logo hasn't been publicly approved. It created potential legal exposure. I pulled out my phone, tapped open the email. Subject, internal morale apparel / approved use, and rotated it toward them. Tanya glanced at it, blinked. That predates the current version of the logo, doesn't it? It's the same vector file. But the context, it was approved, I said calmly. Internally under NDA. The version Dylan is presenting, same file, renamed. Martha looked at Tanya. Tanya looked back at Martha. They both knew what that meant, so they pivoted. This is less about legality, Tanya said, sliding the manila envelope closer, and more about optics. There's a certain standard we're trying to set as we scale. Messaging matters. Messaging, I repeated, like calling an approved internal concept shirt a brand violation. You're not being punished, she said, tone tightening, you're being transitioned. And the LinkedIn post, Tanya didn't flinch. She turned the screen toward me. There it was, the post, already live. A grainy photo of me leaving the building, snapped by some security flunky. My face partially turned, the logo shirt clearly visible. And the caption, excellence means standards. Not all departures are losses. Hash do not rehire, hash brand integrity, hash culture matters. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand, but because I needed to let it burn in. Let it harden. They'd fired me before telling me, and posted it like a moral victory. Effective immediately, Martha added. Like she was reading from a teleprompter, your access will be revoked. Your final paycheck and severance terms are enclosed. Please return all physical materials. You are not to speak to the media, and this conversation is covered under your existing NDA. Speaking of, I said, reaching slowly into my bag and pulling out a thin black folder, I'll be taking this with me. Tanya frowned. What's that? Phase 3 NDA Compliance Addendum, I replied. Signed by legal in January. Covers concept control, disclosure channels, asset usage, and IP trails. She opened her mouth, probably to object, but closed it when she caught Martha's sideways glance. They hadn't read it, or if they had, they didn't understand the teeth it had. I stood, smoothed my shirt, the offending shirt. Tanya reached for a sympathy smile. No hard feelings, I returned it, perfectly mirrored. None at all, thanks for your time. No tears. No shouting. Just a 30-second exit, smooth as glass. I walked past the break room where Dylan was holding court, talking loudly about phase alignment to a junior copywriter who looked like she wanted to crawl into the printer. He saw me leave but didn't say a word, just tightened his jaw and turned away. Cowards always look away. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, the folder tucked under one arm, my phone buzzing softly with notifications I didn't check. When the doors closed, I didn't sigh, I didn't cry. I just leaned back and thought they posted the logo themselves. That shirt, that logo, that $8 million identity, it was public now with a timestamp on a corporate LinkedIn. Posted by HR, I didn't need to leak anything. They'd done it for me, and all I had to do was watch. The thing about being invisible for so long is that no one notices when you're gone, not really. By Monday morning, my name had already vanished from the Slack directory. No goodbye email, no farewell cupcakes in the break room, no thank you for your decade of service LinkedIn post from the CEO, just erased, like a smudge on a window someone finally got around to wiping away. That's the thing about people like Dylan, they don't just replace you, they try to rewrite the story so it looks like you were never there. But I was, and the bones of that rebrand were mine. The color theory. Mine, the vertical lockup for the logo. Mine, the brand voice guide. That was me on 4 hours of sleep, rewriting the same tagline 117 times until it sounded like breathing. So no, I didn't post anything. I didn't send dramatic farewell emails or leak confidential docs to Reddit. I didn't even update my LinkedIn. I just watched. From the outside, the company looked like it was thriving. The website was scrubbed clean and splattered with teaser phrases like something bold is coming and the future has a new look. I nearly gagged when I saw the Vision unveiling countdown banner, 21 days until they presented to the investors. The rebrand timeline had been moved up, not pushed back. Because of course, Dylan wanted it fast. Speed is what guys like him mistake for momentum. But under the polish, I could already see the cracks forming. Website headers weren't loading right on mobile. One of the teaser images used an outdated palette from Phase 0. The social media team posted a brand tone caption that directly contradicted the new voice guide. Tiny mistakes ones I'd have caught and fixed before they even went live. But no one was catching them now, except maybe Emily. My old direct report, technically a brand associate, but more like my second brain during crunch time. She was young, sharp, and careful, and she'd been taking screenshots. I didn't ask her to, she just sent them. First, it was just memes, look at this bold new future, lol over a screenshot of Dylan using an unlicensed stock photo as the homepage hero. Then it turned into whispered updates. Emily signal, Dylan wants to present the full brand package on the investor call. Me, wasn't that supposed to be internal only? Emily, not anymore. CEO fast-tracked it. I think it'll seal Series C. And then the real one. Emily, legal requested recording permission for the Zoom. Said it's for compliance. That one made me sit up. Because the only reason legal would want a recording of a brand presentation is if they're worried it might trigger a clause or an audit, or worse. And let's be clear, if that investor team saw anything that looked even remotely public before the call, the whole thing could collapse. Because that funding wasn't just about numbers. It was about exclusivity. That shiny revolutionary brand they were selling to investors, it had to be unseen, untouched, untainted. But thanks to Tanya and her little victory lap post, it wasn't. It was already out there, right next to my face. I knew they'd realize it eventually. But the real question was when. Before the call, after, or mid-presentation when the lawyer leaned in with that slow, terrifying question, can you explain this timestamp? Meanwhile, inside the company, Dylan was becoming louder, more self-congratulatory. I'd seen the kind before, mistaking rising tension for excitement. He started holding branding inspiration huddles where he played TED clips and talked about emotional texture like he invented Helvetica. Employees who had questions just didn't ask them, because HR had made an example of me. No one wanted to be next. Emily said the team was exhausted. No one was sleeping. Timelines were chaotic. Deadlines were missed and then quietly deleted from the calendar to pretend they never existed. Dylan started pushing for brand teaser video to be released before the call. Just a taste, he said, like anyone wanted to sip on chaos. She sent me a draft. It was 3 fonts mashed into one motion graphic, cut to stock dubstep and ending on a full frontal reveal of the logo. My logo, the same one on the shirt. I didn't reply, not yet, just saved it. At night, I watched the company's feed the way you watch a car roll toward a cliff in slow motion. You can't stop it, but you can take a picture before it flies off the edge. The funny part, they still hadn't taken the LinkedIn post down. It was sitting there, quiet, like a landmine, waiting, and the best part, I wasn't going to touch it, not once, not ever, because they posted it. All I had to do was let it sit, let it breathe, let it age. And the day they hit share screen in front of a table full of investor lawyers, that little photo was going to punch through the rebrand like a bullet through glass. I picked a coffee shop exactly 6 blocks from their office, not too close to raise suspicion, not too far to make it inconvenient. Corner booth, back against the wall, one hand wrapped around a lukewarm cappuccino I'd ordered just to blend in. I'd gotten there 20 minutes early, and even then, I checked the door 6 times before I saw him. Kyle. He didn't look like a threat, just another late-20s guy in khakis and an off-the-rack blazer trying to look older than he was. The kind of junior counsel they send out to handle informal matters so nothing ends up in writing. I remembered his name from the investor summit last year. He'd been the one quietly fact-checking Dylan's vision statement in real time on a legal pad while the senior partner smiled through his teeth. Now he was walking toward me, one eyebrow raised. "You said this was a casual ask," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "And it is," I replied calmly. "Just coffee, hypotheticals, nothing binding." "Sure," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "And this isn't about the Series C pitch," I shrugged. "Let's just say I used to work somewhere that's currently rushing toward a big brand launch, and I've seen some things." He smiled politely, like he'd been trained to. "And what sort of things?" I stirred my drink, pretending to think. "Like, say, an unreleased brand identity accidentally posted online by HR, accompanied by the face of the employee who created it, with a public timestamp." He didn't flinch, but I saw his fingers still on the sleeve of his cup. "That would be unfortunate, hypothetically, of course." I reached into my bag and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, just one. No binder, no briefcase. That would have looked aggressive. This looked curious, casual, just a concerned citizen offering directions to a ticking bomb. I slid it across the table without looking up. "Just something I came across. You don't have to read it here." He picked it up like it might burn, carefully unfolded it. Top half, screenshot of the LinkedIn post. Tanya's name, the HR caption, my face, the shirt, the logo. Bottom half, a printout of the NDA compliance clause, highlighted, dated, signed. I let the silence sit. He studied it carefully, methodically, then folded it shut like it was nothing more than a receipt. "Hypothetically," I said, sipping my coffee, "would something like this count as public disclosure?" He took a long breath. "If that were the only instance, probably not fatal. But if it had circulated, say, been screenshotted or archived," I raised an eyebrow, "then it's potentially a breach, especially if the design is being presented as new and confidential. Even if the breach came from inside the company, especially if it came from inside the company." He tapped the edge of the paper on the table. "This isn't exactly hard evidence. But the timestamp on the post, if someone connected those dots, I'm not asking anyone to." I said evenly, "I'm just concerned." "Concerned," he repeated, watching me. I met his gaze. "When you put that much time into something, you want it launched properly. With integrity. I don't care about revenge, I care about the truth." He didn't answer that, just tucked the paper into his portfolio and stood. "Thanks for the coffee," I nodded. "Anytime," and just like that, he walked out. No promises, no threats. Just a young lawyer with a page of paper and a brain full of alarms. I sat there another 10 minutes just in case anyone was watching. Then I left the mug half full and walked out into the autumn air. My phone buzzed 2 hours later. Emily's signal. Investor counsel requested access logs and brand asset approvals. Dylan says it's a routine check. Routine, my ass. That paper was a seed, nothing more. But I'd planted it in the right soil, and now I just had to wait for it to grow. Dylan was in full peacock mode. Emily said he'd turned the war room into his own private TED stage, whiteboard covered in buzzwords like disruptive elegance and zeitgeist-forward palette. He was pacing in front of an oversized monitor, practicing the pitch with a Bluetooth clicker like he was launching the next Apple product. Never mind that his version of innovation was just my original brand deck with the corners chewed off. Remember, he told the marketing team, "This isn't just a presentation, it's a moment." He rehearsed every slide like it was Shakespeare. Had the AV guy tweaking light temperature for his skin tone, requested a black turtleneck. He didn't get it. Facilities told him we weren't in Steve Jobs cosplay territory yet. But what he did get was total control. The CEO, barely involved. He was glued to the finance sheets, laser-focused on the funding targets and investor queue and a prep. He didn't even flinch when legal dropped the first hint. "We've received a compliance query from the investor team." Might be worth reviewing all previous brand disclosures, especially social. The CEO blinked, didn't look up. It's boilerplate. We're clean. Focus on the call. Legal tried again. There was a LinkedIn post that already saw the pitch deck, Dylan interrupted. They loved it. We're fine. HR backed him up. Tanya even sent a chirpy company-wide email titled Fresh Era, Clean Slate. It ended with, thanks to all who have helped us elevate our standards, your commitment is why we're thriving. Red Emily forwarded it to me with the caption, they really think they wiped the blood off the floor. But they hadn't, because Kyle had started digging. He didn't contact me again. Didn't need to. I wasn't the story anymore, the post was. By Wednesday, the investor team sent a request through back channels. Zoom presentation must be recorded, for internal compliance review only. Dylan didn't blink, he was too high on his own fumes. Fine, he said, let them record, we're bulletproof. Emily told me he actually used that word, bulletproof. Meanwhile, the designers, what few remained, were being crushed under deadlines. Motion graphics team had been told to recut the teaser video for maximum investor engagement, which translated to more logo shots, more slogans, more risk. The intern had to blur out a frame where someone had accidentally left up the Phase 0 draft on a whiteboard. Same draft that matched the shirt. The one on the post. Still live, still time-stamped. Still sitting on LinkedIn like a claymore under a welcome mat. But inside the company, no one wanted to say it out loud. Emily said even legal was hesitant. Dylan had convinced everyone that raising concerns now would erode morale and signal internal doubt to the funding team. So they did what corporate always does when fear creeps in, nothing. They held their breath and hoped the investors wouldn't notice. But Kyle was already threading the needle. Emily forwarded one last message late Thursday night. Emily's signal. Investor team asked for all logo access logs, version history, and external asset approvals. CEO said to send them the clean ones only. Legal looked like they wanted to vomit, they knew. Somewhere deep down, the executive gut was turning. But Dylan kept smiling, kept rehearsing. This is it, he said, arms spread wide in front of the final slide. The moment our brand becomes legendary. And I almost believed him. Because in a way, he was right. This brand would become legendary, just not for the reasons he thought. I watched from my laptop, alone in my apartment, with a half-burnt cinnamon candle flickering beside my screen and a microwave meal I wasn't going to eat cooling on the counter. The Zoom link wasn't password protected, classic oversight when your internal comms person walks out holding half your institutional memory. I wasn't in the call as a participant, just an observer, anonymous, quiet like always. The screen loaded. 32 participants, big names, legal counsel, equity partners, 2 major VCs, and dead center, grinning like a discount game show host was Dylan, hair shellacked, shirt 2 buttons too tight. Behind him, the new logo projected on a slick branded background, all white space and soft gradients and lies. Emily had warned me it would happen at exactly 9:03 a.m. This, Dylan said, striding into frame with all the swagger of a man who'd never been told no, is the moment we've been building toward. Our bold new identity, never before seen. I choked on a sip of coffee. Never before seen, there it was, the phrase that would slit his campaign wide open. I pulled up the LinkedIn post on a second tab. There I was, still standing outside the building, that soft cotton tee like a spotlight against my skin. The logo, bold and clean and center-framed. The post still up, still time-stamped, 12 days ago. Some of you might remember our old visual identity, Dylan was saying, flipping to the before slide. Great foundation, but we've evolved. We wanted something that reflects our vision, our momentum. This isn't just a rebrand, it's a rebirth. He clicked again. The logo filled the screen. My logo. The one I bled into at 2 a.m. with a migraine and a mug of stale tea. One they said was too muted before dressing it up with buzzwords and a fresher font. I scanned the participants' faces. Most were muted, arms crossed. The kind of muted judgment you only see in venture capital, stone-faced until something becomes valuable or dangerous. And then I saw him. Kyle, bottom row, second from the left, watching, not smiling, not blinking. His eyes flicked once off camera and then back. Dylan kept going. This mark, he said, gesturing to the logo like it had floated down from Mount Olympus, has never been shown outside our walls. You're the first to see it. Kyle tilted his head. Never shown? He clicked something, probably opening the same LinkedIn tab I had up. And just like that, his face changed. His jaw didn't drop, his eyes didn't bulge. He didn't gasp like in the movies, he just narrowed his eyes. Slight squint, barely there, but I knew that look. I'd seen it in lawyers who find the one sentence that ruins a contract. He looked again. Back to the zoom, back to the logo, back to the tab. You could almost see the wheels turning. Dylan kept riding the high. We believe this identity captures our essence, modern, confident, clean, a voice of integrity, trust, and innovation. The irony nearly made me laugh. On the second screen, my LinkedIn profile was still public. My face, my shirt, their logo. Tanya's caption glowing like a confession. Sometimes protecting the brand means making hard choices. Timestamp, visible, likes 48, comments, still growing. One of the investors toggled their video off. Another leaned out of frame. Subtle signs, nothing dramatic. But when you know what to watch for, it's louder than a shout. Dylan didn't notice. He was too busy taking a victory lap over stolen ground. He wrapped the pitch with a tagline he didn't write, where clarity meets boldness. I had written that on a post-it during the 5th week of brand testing. He'd found it in a draft and slapped it on the final deck like it was his revelation. Kyle raised his hand virtually. Quick question, he said, smiling just enough to scare you. Before we move on, can you confirm this logo was never seen externally before today? Dylan blinked. Correct. This is the first reveal. Kyle nodded slowly. Just wanted to be certain. Thanks. Then he muted, and silence swept through the meeting like a cold front. I closed the second tab. The post was still live, but not for long, not after that look. They were halfway through the vision to reality section when Kyle unmuted. Dylan had just finished butchering the brand story, claiming the logo represented a new dawn that emerged organically through deep team collaboration, which was funny, considering he hadn't opened a single Figma file until a week ago. The presentation was stalling. The smiles were cracking. You could feel it like a storm just off-screen waiting to land. Then Kyle's voice slid into the call. Smooth, quiet, surgical, sorry to interrupt. Dylan froze. You could almost hear the click of his confidence stalling. The screen split. Kyle was unmuted, his camera perfectly framed, legal pad still in view, pen tapping once. His tone was calm, too calm. Just want to clarify something from earlier, he said. You mentioned this brand identity has never been seen publicly, that this presentation marks the first external reveal. Correct? Dylan nodded, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yes, of course. Kyle tilted his head, then glanced to someone off camera. Interesting, because this was on LinkedIn. Yesterday, the screen blinked. Kyle had initiated a screen share, and there it was. LinkedIn post. My face standing outside the building backlit by a gray sky. The logo printed clearly across my shirt. Tanya's caption in all its smug glory. Excellence means standards. Not all departures are losses. Hash do not rehire hash brand integrity. Date visible. Time visible. Company tagged. Logo front and center. No one spoke. The kind of silence that's not just quiet, it's vacuum sealed. All sound gone, oxygen pulled straight from the room. Dylan's smile faltered. That image may not represent. Kyle didn't flinch. It's public. It's time-stamped. And based on what I'm seeing, it's the same mark you're presenting today. Same vector, same lockup, that's a problem. The CEO leaned forward. Wait, where did that come from? Your company's HR LinkedIn page, Kyle said. Posted by your team, it's still live. The CEO's lips parted like he might say something, then shut again. I watched him blink. His jaw moved, but no words came. His eyes flicked to someone off camera. Likely legal, likely too late. The CFO's name lit up in the participants list, then immediately disappeared. Camera off. Kyle continued, not missing a beat. From a legal standpoint, this constitutes a public disclosure. And if the design was represented to us as confidential, this discrepancy impacts material terms of the funding. Dylan tried again, voice higher now. It wasn't authorized. The shirt was printed during internal prototyping. She wore it without permission. Kyle raised an eyebrow. She? He let the word hang there. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to, because now the investors were paying attention. One of the VCs leaned forward, unmuted just long enough to say, "So you fired the person who designed it, then posted her photo with the logo before unveiling it to us?" Dylan stammered. We HR acted independently. Kyle clicked through a few tabs. The post tags the company. It's in a public feed, and the content includes unreleased IP. He stopped screen share. His face filled the frame again. I'd recommend delaying signature of any Series C documents until we fully review this breach. At minimum, we'll need clarity on who approved the disclosure and whether this impacts exclusivity claims in your materials. The CEO was pale now, actually pale. One hand trembled at the edge of the desk, fingers curling slightly as if they might grab something, anything to stop the freefall. I wasn't aware, he started, but the sentence never finished, because the fallout had already begun. Kyle nodded once. We'll follow up shortly, in writing, and just like that, he muted. The call didn't end, but it may as well have. The investors fell silent. Cameras flicked off, one by one. Could see the realization blooming across the faces still visible. HR execs, product heads, Dylan's assistant shrinking behind a potted plant. Dylan stared ahead, frozen. He didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't move, and I sipped my coffee. Warm, sweet, perfect. Sometimes justice doesn't scream. It just clears its throat, clicks share screen, and lets the silence do the rest. The next morning, the LinkedIn post vanished. No explanation, no apology. Just quietly deleted like it had never existed. But of course, by then, it had already been screenshotted, archived, emailed, and dropped into at least 3 industry Slacks with headlines like HR's $8M oops. One version even had my face cropped out and replaced with a stock photo of a dumpster fire. Fair enough. Emily sent me a screenshot from inside the building. Dylan's desk, empty. A company-wide email had gone out at 7:13 a.m. Cold, vague, corporate. VP of Marketing Dylan Rossner is on temporary leave pending review of procedural discrepancies related to external communications. Translation: we need a fall guy, and he's loud enough to be heard falling. The Series C meeting was canceled. Officially rescheduled, but everyone knew what that meant. The investors stopped replying to company emails. Legal started digging into reputational exposure. R drafted a one-paragraph statement about renewed focus on compliance culture, but it never got published because nothing could unring that bell. The logo was tainted now. The brand was compromised. The whole launch, 18 months of strategy, design, iteration, flushed down the same toilet they threw me into. It wasn't just the legal breach. It was the story. They fired the woman who built it, then paraded her out wearing the evidence. That's not just bad optics. That's poetic stupidity and poetry spreads. By Friday, one of the VCs had posted a cryptic tweet, no names, just this: "Don't tell me your vision is bold if you can't see what's right in front of you." It had 11,000 likes by lunch. I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't DM anyone. I didn't need to, because later that afternoon, a wire hit my account. Retainer fee, 6 months. Courtesy of a boutique consulting firm backed by, you guessed it, the same investor group. No email, no phone call. Just a clean contract forwarded by a recruiter I'd worked with 5 years ago. They asked for you specifically. I signed it quietly. No announcement, no post, no bragging. I just opened my portfolio, scrolled to the top, and made one update under recent work. Lead designer, $8M brand redesign withdrawn due to IP breach. That was all. I closed the tab, took another sip of coffee, and looked out the window. The sun had finally burned through the morning fog. Across the street, someone was arguing with a parking meter. The world somehow kept spinning. I didn't feel angry or vindicated or smug. I felt clean, because in the end it wasn't sabotage, it wasn't revenge, it wasn't even strategy. It was just the truth stitched into fabric, worn on a Friday, caught in a careless photo, and posted by the very people who thought erasing me would protect them. I never raised my voice. I never raised a hand. I just walked out the door and let them press publish. They wanted a bold new brand. They got one. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.